Yes. And, the other thing to add is when you're actually eating later in the evening, like it does, like if you want to eat and then go straight to bed, it impacts you because your blood sugar levels are impacted. So you're going to have a worse, like crappier sleep because it can wake you up because, the whole cortisol, serotonin levels are a little wonky because, isn't it true at nighttime, your cortisol levels should be really down in that restful time.
One of the areas we discussed in a previous episode is, why can't I lose weight even though I'm doing all the right things? And sometimes you might be doing all the quote unquote right things, and it could be some other metabolic issue like a hormone imbalance. So go back to that episode and figure out, is there something going on? Today, we're going to go through some really usable, applicable tips that will help you lose weight. And the first thing I want you to start with is figuring out, why do you want to lose weight? Like owning your why. So understanding that setting a goal is really important too. Understanding what your baseline is. And we talk in another episode, like, what is your weight? Do you want to weigh yourself, and at what frequency? Or do you want to just measure your clothing and how it fits on your body? And then measuring your waist circumference, perhaps. So setting a goal and then knowing why you want that goal. Is it for a health concern? Is it for feeling better energy? Is it because your joints hurt or your doctor told you? Now, if you have self-image issues, let's say you're really hard on yourself and you look in the mirror every day and you're critical and you're saying, you don't like your body or you don't like certain aspects of it, and you're starting your day like that, or every time you look in the mirror, is that going to, every time you look in the mirror and you're at your image and you're being negative, is that going to help? And maybe the science and you're dropping weight and you're doing really well. Maybe somebody's guiding you through it. But every time you look in the mirror, even at 30 pounds down, you're still seeing the 30 pounds heavier person. And you haven't changed the scripting in your head. It's so much easier then to go back to the weight that you started, because you'll throw in the towel because you're like, oh, this is making a difference. I still feel yuck and I'm still look the same way.
Right.
So it's really important to, number one, before any weight loss journey, that you work on the scripting that you're saying to yourself when you're looking in the mirror, and loving yourself as you are, no matter where you are in your journey, but also looking at, as a very basic piece of homework, every day, first thing in the morning, wake up and look at your previous accomplishments. Like, what have you accomplished so far in your life? Like, whether it be relationship accomplishments, whether it be, education, or perhaps there are habits that you're so proud of and you're going to hold on to those as an accomplishment. And maybe it's a degree, maybe it's, you're so proud because you drink a ton of water every day, and you wake up and the first thing you do is drink water. Those little habits, those are important. And actually, that's one of the biggest things that I have my patients do when they're trying to drop weight, is drink more water, because sometimes we're confused with regards to our thirst versus our hunger. So, Mary, can you come up with like 4 accomplishments in your life that you're super proud of?
You're putting me right on the spot.
I'm putting you right on the spot.
No, and that's okay. It's just that, of course, I love to sit outside of myself, because I want to think of also those people that are actually having a hard time getting out of bed. And so the accomplishment is literally like, I got out of bed this morning.
Yeah.
I've been having a really hard time. I had a miscarriage, and like it took something for me to get up, and I got up. So that's an accomplishment. So it doesn't have to be these giant accolades.
Yes.
Right. So when you say, what am I most proud of? Like, to me, I don't really highlight like the big giant things. I like to focus in on the present moment. And even for the day, it's like, what am I proud of today? I'm proud that, I didn't yell at my kid this morning when I could have. Like little
no,
things.
That is a big deal. It means that you took care of yourself. So you were able to then, handle your emotions. Right. So I think it's, so go ahead. Mm-hmm.
No. And, like I'm proud of, well, cause you're asking me personally. So I'm like, what am I proud of? I'm actually proud that, you and I no matter what, we're committed and we're here and we show up and we do these podcasts. Why? Because we want to make a difference. And that's why we're here. Like, I'm very proud of that. And I'm proud that to know you and, reeled you in.
You're so cute.
Right?
Oh, I love you.
And
you're so sweet.
Like, and then, with patience, I'm proud that I get to be there no matter what. Years and years ago, one of my mentors, Dr. Randy Lewis, would say, we're here. I know that when patients come in and a lot of them want to conceive and have a family, it's like, you got to know that your role is not to make them have a baby. Your role is to literally sit by them no matter what happens. And I fully get and embrace this because, if we had it our way, you and I would be able to make babies like, and all the physicians out there that are helping people go through this. It's like, there are a lot of things that we can't control. And people, yes, we celebrate those that get pregnant and have a baby and live a full life. And, but we also are able to, I celebrate my ability to sit with people in the depths of their darkness. That's an accomplishment. And to be able to be okay and sit in silence, not to try to like make someone feel better, because there's a lot of challenges that we face and it's just crappy. And we just need to name that. And it's okay. Yeah. So those are the things and I can walk away and feel good about myself. So it's like, so as I say this, what can you think about that you can feel proud of?
Right. And if you do go bigger and think about those accomplishments in life. So for example, if I think, okay, if I was on a weight loss journey and every morning I would wake up and say, okay, I did my university degree. I did my naturopathic medical degree. I got through 8 years of fertility. And that takes a lot of perseverance, as you know. I, supported my mother through all of her transitions with Alzheimer's and like just bigger things and still stayed sane and was able to work through that. And yes, there was a lot of crying and grief and, but I, at the end of the day, I'm proud of all of these accomplishments. And then I now have to lose weight. So if I can do all of that, then I can show up for me and start my day realizing and flooding my brain with these concepts to know that I can be successful in whatever the goal is, whether it's weight loss or just getting out of bed and showing up to the fertility clinic. I can do that today. Because if I did all of that, I can do today. Yes. And I can do the little habits that, your weight loss support person is asking you to do. And if you're then thinking, oh my gosh, it's just too overwhelming, there's just so many things that I have to do, well, then layer in habits. So the first habit would be for a week, or maybe you're doing it for 3 weeks straight. You're waking up every morning and that's all you're doing is you wrote down your accomplishments and you're reading that to yourself every day. This is what I've accomplished. If I can do this, I can do what the doctor is asking me to do from a weight loss perspective. I can make the efforts to do all the things, all the little tips, because it's not just about calories in versus calories out, exercising the cake off that you just ate because you're feeling bad. You're changing the scripting in your mind so that you don't then crave the cake, right?
Absolutely. Because of course, what we think will guide our hormones too. The hypothalamus is this feeler for our body, both externally and then internally. So in Chinese medicine, we bring it back to the whole internal affect. And our affect, meaning all of our feelings, all of our feels, which can also be difficult. So those uncomfortable feelings like the sadness, the grief, the fears, the worries, the frustrations, all that gets internalized and over time can impact our physiology.
Right. So how about even looking next step as a habit to layer in, where are you getting your happy hormones from? So your happy neurohormones like dopamine, serotonin, the oxytocin. So as you know, when you raise oxytocin and dopamine in your brain and serotonin, you feel quite satisfied, quite happy, content. So if you are feeling a lack of those chemicals, then it's really easy to think, oh, I just want to eat something carb rich. I want to eat something that's going to give me that feeling of fulfillment, that satisfaction, that I'm full. And then you think that and you do get a little bit of a carb hit, a serotonin hit in your brain when you eat those carbs. So you feel kind of satisfied. Then you feel gross later because you ate too much, or you're going for some chocolate to get that satisfaction, right? And I still do have chocolate, don't get me wrong. But when you binge or overeat because your brain's not satisfied with the knowledge that you've been successful before, you can be successful now, or that you can seek that neurochemistry support in other ways. So let's talk about how would you raise your oxytocin, Mary?
Well, for myself, now that I actually have a dog, and we talked about this in another episode with Dr. Julia Sen, I really do feel this great peace when I go for my walks with Honey, my puppy. And that's twice a day. Like it's just this sense of calm. And I think in that calmness, when we decrease that stress response, it just allows everything to work better. Right. So that's one, connecting with my child, connecting with my husband, and actually, practicing gratitude. So my husband can trigger me. He could leave dishes in the sink. But then, this morning, my neighbor texts me and says, thank Jean-Louis for mowing our lawn the other day, because they just had a child that died and he's 21. And aren't I grateful that he had this empathy to do that tiny little thing for someone,
right?
Without any expectation of anything back. So to me, that what filled my cup was hearing that he, not only myself, but like someone else, like he did something for someone else. So I'm grateful. Right. So looking at into gratitude. I'm just mumbling here, but
No, it's so true. Reaching out to help another person, even if it's not you directly, but somebody in your life, and you can just feel that like warmth towards the person who did the helping. Even you talking about how much we care, like to show up for ourselves, to be able to show up for other people and like connect. So connection's huge. So reaching out and connecting to somebody, that raises your oxytocin, and then helping somebody, and even listening to somebody, listening and hearing them, that raises their dopamine. So you're receiving oxytocin because you're recognizing you're helping, and their dopamine's going up. So connecting doesn't have to be hugging or physical intimacy, which also that does help raise oxytocin. It does also raise dopamine. So physical intimacy also doesn't have to be sexual intimacy, but that can be a way to raise dopamine and oxytocin. And then, like you're saying, a step out would be to help. Like it's such a big deal. So you can do these things to satisfy those neurochemicals in your brain, and then you feel full, like you feel a physical, emotional sense of fullness, so that you don't have to then say, oh, I need to eat to feel full.
Yes, because what does that fulfill? You're trying to utilize food as a form of therapy to have you feel full, because you're feeling void and empty inside. So it's like, how do we fulfill that? That's brilliant. I love that. And when you are talking about this, I'm smiling because, guys, we are super excited. In a couple of weeks, we are going to be interviewing Alison Armstrong, who wrote The Queen's Code, and we'll be talking a lot about this kind of connection and relationship. And I owe it to Tanya, who introduced me to her, but she's a brilliant woman. And
so brilliant.
She is. And because I've always gone by the book, The Female Brain. Do you know that one? And so she's a scientist, so she comes at it from a very scientific point of view, because it's true, like women's brains are wired differently than men. How we satiate ourselves is going to be different than a man's wiring. So I love how Alison takes what she says and breaks it down into such a functional, practical, identifiable way. And I was listening to her book today, and she actually mentioned that book. I'm like, aha, see, I knew she must know that book.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Love it. Yes, I'm so excited. We are going to learn all about how to have better intimacy and strategies to raise your oxytocin and dopamine. And another thing you can do is really protect your sleep.
Yes.
So, a lot of people will get stuck in this habit of Instagram scrolling or TikTok scrolling and get lost in the vortex of social media right before bed. And yes, that gives us very quick dopamine. Don't get me wrong. It's exciting to watch this stuff and it's funny and you get to learn. The problem is if it's too close to bedtime and you're spending too much time, you might then say, I'm up, I'm hungry, let me eat now. And then you're eating to stay up longer to do this little kind of habit before bed. And then you're all of a sudden see 1 o'clock in the morning. And maybe it's, watching Netflix, or it doesn't have to be necessarily Instagram scrolling. And you're binge watching Netflix series. And then you're like, oh, I want to watch the next one. So I've got to eat to stay up. And then you are struggling
Yeah.
to wake up the next morning and do the things that help you support you to have a high energy day and prep your food. And so then you're caught in this like habit where you're not getting good sleep, because if you pass your second, you go into your second wind, then your sleep is not just late, it's also disturbed.
Yes. And, the other thing to add is when you're actually eating later in the evening, like it does, like if you want to eat and then go straight to bed, it impacts you because your blood sugar levels are impacted. So you're going to have a worse, like crappier sleep because it can wake you up because, the whole cortisol, serotonin levels are a little wonky because, isn't it true at nighttime, your cortisol levels should be really down in that restful time. But if you're going to raise it by number one, stimulating your brain and then also stimulating through food, then it's going to impact the quality of sleep. And can you speak to the ghrelin as well, just because that it impacts it through the sleep as well, right? So we need to look at
Yes.
why sleeping is so important, and then also address those that are like chronically poor sleepers and not make them feel bad.
Right. So ghrelin is one of the hormones that goes up, and I like to think about it as the growling hormone. It makes you hungry. So it goes up when your sleep is disturbed. And so then you're just ravenous the next day if your sleep is poor. And your leptin hormone, so the satiety hormone, the hormone that makes you feel physically full, not wanting to eat, it goes down if your sleep is disturbed. Now, what can you do to support your sleep if you are somebody who's really struggling? You can wind clock back earlier, have good sleep hygiene. We've talked about this in previous episodes. If you push through the second wind, meaning like you're feeling tired, you ignore that feeling of tired and then stay up, that's when cortisol kicks in. So you're trying to go to sleep before the cortisol kicks and really honor and respect the feeling of going to bed earlier and feeling sleepy, even if it means you're going to sleep at 9 o'clock. Some people fall asleep for a nap at 9 o'clock or 8:30 and then not stay asleep because maybe they fell asleep on the couch and then they're up until 1 or 2. And that habit is what throws people off because their sleep is disturbed and they're eating. So it might mean going to bed at 8:30 or 9, waking up super early, and then slowly shifting to a more normal time of going to sleep. Now, if you're somebody who has issues and you're saying like with sleeping and you don't want them to be us to make them feel bad about that, there are things that you can do, right? Look at your hormones, your other hormones. Like, is it a estrogen or progesterone deficiency that's making you sleep at night? Is there some kind of trauma and you're suffering with post-traumatic stress disorder and you don't want to sleep and you need to go get help with a psychologist? Is it that you're not getting enough exercise, which is using up your cortisol? So they'll like sitting around all day, or maybe you're in pain. So there are definite reasons you could be up at night other than just the habit. And those need to be addressed because sleep really does need support. They say, according to the literature, that 5 hours of sleep at night is enough to not impact your health or cause chronic illness. But if you are struggling to drop weight, you would want to push for more. So they did this research because of pilots and surgeons to see what's the minimum number of hours of sleep that you need in order to function well enough to get through the surgery or to fly and not fall asleep while flying as a pilot. So 5 hours is the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not what you want to strive towards. It's like, no, we actually want
Not
to
for
do a
weight
lot more than
loss.
that. Yeah, especially
Yeah.
for weight loss. So this
Mm-hmm.
is all such an important conversation. And I just want to throw in there the TCM, Chinese medicine point of view. And in Chinese medicine, we also talk about the whole circadian rhythm. And through that 24-hour period, there are certain organ systems that are functioning at its peak. And then there's certain organs that are more at rest. So if we're sleeping too late at night, you're activating certain organs that are normally supposed to be winding down. So if you like, ideally, we say try to go to bed before 11, because after that, they'll activate the liver and the heart. And then you're going to start
And the
thinking,
gallbladder.
overthinking.
Yeah, you're trying to
Yes.
make decisions.
Yes, exactly. Very good. Right. So, and then you'll ruminate. And rumination is definitely not a great way to sleep and so, obviously sometimes you're busy, you have a deadline and what have you, and you literally can't help but actually stay up. Or if you have a kid and you have to get up in the middle of the night, right? So what do you do in those situations? If you're just totally in your thoughts, just get it out, like write it down, whatever's there. Or if you have like oh gosh, I'm worrying about my shopping list, or, the things I have to do the next day, like write it down so that you can get Google. It out of or tell Google or Alexa.
Hey, Google, add such and such to the shopping list.
I didn't think of that.
Yeah. So you have to open the lights. Yes, I do.
Okay. I just learned something. That's amazing.
Yes.
Okay.
I also don't yell in my house. I say, hey, Alexa, broadcast. And then we say broadcasts. Oops, Alexa heard.
Oh, wow. What does that mean when you say broadcasts?
So broadcast, it allows you to broadcast from the kitchen. Let's say to the kids upstairs who are waking up or haven't woken up, I'll say, hey, Alexa, broadcast. Guys, your breakfast is ready. Come downstairs. Or if you say good morning, then the birds chirp and it wakes them up.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm, it really helps because then you're not yelling. And so if the kids are yelling at me, I'll say, hey, Alexa, broadcast, please come downstairs to tell me what you have to say, because I'm not going to listen.
That's amazing. That just is, saves you a whole whack of uncomfortable emotions.
Which can cause weight gain.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying this.
Yes. So it's really helpful to have these little strategies, especially if you're, say, breastfeeding in the middle of the night and, or you're just waking up for other reasons. Maybe you're in perimenopause or postmenopause and you don't want to turn on the lights, right? So have an Alexa or Google that you can talk to put reminders in there and then just get it off your chest. Maybe you can even say, create a note. And then the note is talking. If you're waking up your partner, maybe you would, go to another room to do something like that, or you write it out if you prefer. But definitely journaling is one of the best things to do for stress associated with, struggling to drop weight, or if you're trying to drop weight and you're trying to get emotions out. One of the things that I will often say is a really solid tip if you are an ovulating, menstruating woman is to address your mental health concerns or concerns with around, anything to do with your partner. If you have one, when you are ovulating instead of when you're about to get your period, so that you don't go into this fight mode or argument mode. You might have issues you need to manage or deal with, and you might want to get it off your chest, but you might say to your partner, I don't want solutions. I just want to download. I'm sorry ahead of time for anything I'm about to say, or you journal during that time and then say, but I'd like to address this properly when I'm ovulating because I can make more sense of my emotions.
That's really fantastic because, of course, as we know, and you may not, that, different times of your cycle, you have different relationships in the ratio of hormones, right? So between the estrogen and the progesterone, and then, all those kinds of things that can impact our emotional health and well-being as well. So that's really great.
And our hunger goes up just before our period, the week before our period, as the progesterone, estrogen are on the downcline, they're going down and we're more hungry. So what do? Do you keep fasting, for example, or do you keep eating a restricted number of calories? I usually say no, eat more. I usually say
Yes.
stop fasting and eat when you wake up if your stomach is growling. And in fact, add extra carbohydrates that week. Because if you don't intentionally add healthy carbohydrates to a meal, what ends up happening is you're extra hungry. You're eating that perfect salad and chicken and maybe a little half cup of quinoa and beans. And you're like, I did really well. Excellent. And then you're just eating a whole bag of chips because you're starving.
Yeah, exactly.
So instead, just eat until you're full on your plate. And then you're not eating the chips because you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I look at the chips and my brain kind of wants them, but no, just not hungry because I ate enough food at the meal. And that's perfect because you won't gain the same number of pounds or ounces if
Yeah.
you are eating more healthy foods compared to eating, and binge eating chips and chocolate and desserty things, right?
So then, on that note, one of the very practical tips is just not having it in the house so that if you really, really, really want it, it takes a lot of effort to get it. Like if it's just sitting there ready to go, then of course you're going to go towards it. So make it really difficult.
Set yourself up for success.
Exactly. And then also back to the meal planning, right? So like have the healthy foods there available, have the healthy snacks there available so that if you are having that increased hunger, yes, you eat more, but still like you may be that insatiable time of month. So it's like have the healthier snack also readily available because it takes effort to cut and chop vegetables or right versus like opening a bar of like a chocolate chip bag or whatever,
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing to do is learn what a healthy carb is versus a less healthy carb. Recognize we need carbohydrates. We don't need to be super restricted in following a keto diet where the carbohydrates are less than 40 grams. Just understanding what a healthy carbohydrate is. We talked about this in another episode, kind of layering in weekly, learning how to cook brown rice for 1 week and trying different recipes. And then the next week, trying quinoa out, trying different recipes. And then the next week, trying out root vegetables, sweet potatoes, carrots, potatoes. So every week, trying a new healthy carbohydrate with different recipes, and then making sure that the portions are reasonable so that you are feeling full enough the week before your period. But then the rest of the month, trying to, eat on a smaller plate. Like that is one really helpful strategy. And if you're hungry, an hour and a half later, have some tea. If that doesn't satisfy you, then come back for more of the food rather than going for a snack. And if you prep your carbohydrates, I find for most people, the protein and veggies are way easier to organize than the carbohydrates because it's way faster to cook pasta and white rice than it is to cook brown rice and quinoa and prepare root vegetables. So the meal prep for carbohydrates is really important and understanding good versus less healthy carbohydrates.
That's a great tip. And then of course, make a whack of it so that you're not having to do it all the time.
Yeah. So for that week, and you can freeze some.